أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So today we begin the explanation on Surah al-Bayyinah, 17th in our series. Now this surah happens to be one of the longest of the short surahs, in that it covers about 11 lines of text in the 13-line Quran. But having said that, it only has 8 ayat, and it's divided into 2 parts, which we'll explain as we go along. So the meaning of the word Bayyinah means the proof or evidence or something that cannot be doubted. Now, what were the 2 things that were not to be doubted was the fact that the Prophet ﷺ was in the midst of the people of Makkah and later in Medina. So his physical presence was one ultimate proof. And then secondly, the actual Quran is a revelation with time over 23 years. And it kind of confirmed all the previous scriptures. We know of at least 4 scriptures called also tablets or books or suhuf. So Sahifa is one and suhuf is a plural. So all in all, these were the 2 proofs of the time of people living in that era when the Prophet was still was alive and conveying the message to everybody. So the word proof is mentioned twice in this surah, in both verse 1 as well as at the end of verse 4. And what it actually does, the surah, is that it spells out the basic tenets of our faith. One of the key foundations of our faith, which is the belief of hell, as well as the existence of a place called heaven, earmarked for either people that do good or do evil, and they will have their ultimate abodes in one of these 2 places. Other alternatives to the meaning is the clear evidence or the clear proof or the clear sign or the evidence. So just very briefly, it starts off in a very unique way with the word lam, which is a negative particle, lam yakunil ladhi. So the faithless, kafaru is the word kafir, kafara, to disbelieve. From the people of the book and the polytheists, they were not set apart. Right? Munfakina is to separate one from the other, to put them in sort of compartments, until this Bayyinah had come to them. And what was the Bayyinah? First of all, it was an apostle from Allah, a prophet from Allah, citing the or purified or very valuable scripture or something divinely ordained from Allah. So the 2 things that were divinely sort of put into place historically was the advent of the Prophet living amongst the people, as well as, in this case, the Quran that was being revealed. And in it are upright writings. So kutubun kayyima, kutub is the plural of kitab, and kayyima means upright or established or very valuable or value-adding kind of laws that we need to apply in our lives. Then it moves on to ayah number 4, and those who were given the book did not divide or were not divided except after the proof had come to them. In other words, those who wanted to change or who wanted to convert or become a Muslim, they became an entity on its own. And those that chose not to take that leap of faith, of going into the faith of Islam, they obviously remained the way they were, which is either the mushrikun, the polytheists, those that believed in the idols, or it could even be a reference to the Christians and the Jews, because they were the people of the book, the Ahl al-Kitab, as it were, that were also living side by side along the small handful of Muslims, plus the majority kafir or mushrikeen that were present in Makkah at the time. And when they moved to Medina, there were lots of Jews as well settled in various places. There were 2 specific tribes that were also there, And at the end, they went to to a place called Khaybar, and they fomented trouble against the Muslims, and they had to be fought against, and then they were exiled from even Khaybar and throughout Medina, and then they went further north. So essentially, this first four ayat are talking about this book and the Prophet ﷺ that came to, as it were, divide, to differentiate between the truth and other sort of faiths or uh, uh, polytheistic beliefs that were in the course of nature at the time. Now, the next four verses talk about, yet they were not commanded, and this is exactly what all the divine faiths commanded. The commands were the same, in that they were asked to worship, this ibadah. Ya'bud, we've covered ibad, abd and rabb, from Surah Fatiha already. Essentially, it's about worship and to be a slave of Allah, that the in total obedience, the abd, dedicating their faith to Him as men or people of pure faith, in other words, having sincerity in their belief and pureness in the spirit, and to maintain the prayer, in other words, establish the prayer as a regular feature in their lives daily, as well as pay the zakah. So essentially, what was required of them was these few things. Get your ibadah in order. In other words, get your relationship with Allah in place. That was on a personal level, with the sincerity in terms of your own personal worship. And the second thing is, in terms of you being a community member, you need to do the other thing, which is pay the zakat, or pay the various sadaqahs that we need to give, whether of obligatory nature like the zakat is, or even of the voluntary nature, which is like the sadaqat that we normally do. And that is essentially the upright religion, a dinul qayyima. Right? So we had kutubun qayyima before, now we have the upright religion, or the firm religion that essentially asks its worshippers to do these few things. Then it goes on to a description of ayah number 6. Indeed, the faithless from among the people of the book and the polytheists, their final abode will be in the fire of hell, to remain in it da'iman, forever. And these people are described as the worst of creatures, the sharrul bariya. Shar is evil. And then the next two ayah talk about the opposite of this people, that is, those who have faith and do righteous deeds. They happen to be the other side of the spectrum, which is the best of the creatures, the khairul bariya. And what is their reward? First of all, their reward is nearness to their Lord, to Allah. Secondly, the bounty or the jaza or the reward of entering the garden of even the Jannatul Firdaus, or the Jannat, where tajri min tahti al-anhar, there's a lot of streams that flow through it. And they to remain khalidin. Khalid is like forever, to remain there in a state of bliss for perpetuity. And on top of it, it says, radiyallahu anhum, Allah is pleased with them, and they are also pleased with Allah. In other words, it's the abd and the rabb are like coming together, and in unison, each is appreciating the other's effort and work and what they've done. So they given the ultimate bliss, which is this Jannah. And that is for those who are khashiyah. They had the khawf, or the khushua of the Rabb. In other words, they feared their Lord, and therefore they were given this as a bounty. So this is in a nutshell what the surah is about. Now I'm going to talk about it from a different context, which is, let's look at it. There's a lot of talk about the Abrahamic Accords, and who are these Abrahamic prophets, as it were. Now, if you look at our timeline of the prophets that are mentioned in the Quran, Ibrahim alayhi salam had two wives. Sarah was on the one side and Hajira was the other. And from Hajira, that union gave the birth of the son Ismail, and much lower down, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Arab genealogy of Ibrahim's sort of descendants went one line through the one wife. And through Sarah, the other wife, you have the other genealogy of Ishaq, Yaqub, the father of Yusuf, And Yusuf, Surah Yusuf in the Quran, he had 11 brothers, 10 of which were from one wife, and him and Binyamin were from the second wife of Yaqub, and what happened to them. Then in that genealogy also we have Dawood and Suleiman, David and Solomon, and from there you get lower down, coming down to Musa. So the Israelites, the Banu Israel, come from that sort of that lineage on the extreme left. And then in between, there is other sort of intermarriages and all the rest of it. And you have Isa or Jesus alayhi salam as well, coming from the same lineage. So Musa, Isa, and Muhammad are the three prophets regarded as the three major religions of Abraham, and that's what this slide is trying to explain, that this is how we have the Abrahamic religions all believing in the same thing, but obviously with time some religions change things around. Now let's see what I'll just give you a quick overview of the 25 prophets that are mentioned in the Quran by name. The Arabic name is mentioned in this particular column here. As we know it, as Muslims, we know Adam and Idris and Nuh and Saleh, and this line goes down. The way the know it is Adam and Enoch and Noah and Eber and all the rest of it. Then this is the more or less the time frame when they lived, more or less which millennium. Now each millennium is in a different color. So if you look at right from the bottom, this last green, the two lines at the bottom, the two rows there, are showing the millennium from when the Christian era began with the birth of Jesus, going right through Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam till the first 1,000 years of history. Now we're in 2024. So we're in the third millennium, as it were, from the time of Jesus. Then if you go backwards in time, this was the first millennium before Christ. And this was the blue is the second millennium before Christ. That the pink is the third, the purple was the fourth, and then the fifth and sixth, going back in time. Now I don't want to go into too much detail, but essentially what's interesting to note here is the number of times these prophets are mentioned by name. This is the number of times they are mentioned in the Quran. Now, if you look at the one that has the most mention is Musa alayhi salam, which is quite amazing because a lot of things happened. It was during the time of Pharaoh, as well as the Banu Israel, and all the different miracles that he was able to do and convince people with. And he even took the Banu Israel, saved them from the clutches of Pharaoh and his army, crossed the Red Sea and went into Sinai and then into Canaan. And he lived there and he preached there, and him together with his brother Harun, they preached for many years, and till the very end they tried to preach to Pharaoh to say, come into the fold of Islam and accept Islam. And we know that Pharaoh never agreed to that, and he died death by drowning. And obviously his body wasn't even buried into the ground or into the water, but it was brought back on land as a marker to the rest of humanity that came after that, as a sign of what happens to tyrants of that sort. They live forever in anguish, and it will be a sign and a symbol for others not to go that path if they want to be one of those that receive Jannah as a reward. All right, so we have, and if you look at where the areas that they were sent to, if you look at the Israelites and the Copts were in Egypt, Nineveh is in near Jerusalem, so that came, and essentially they were the Israelites that even Isa alayhi salam had to sort of give his message to. So the only two prophets or three that came to Mecca were Ibrahim alayhi salam with his son Ismail, and then finally Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that used Mecca as the base, and the Kaaba was built, and that became the source of where Islam started from. Okay, now if we look at the universal message that the Quran, as well as all the other scriptures in history taught, essentially were the same. Now, in this Surah Al-An'am, there's one long verse that says, say, O Prophet, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, come, let me recite to you what your Lord has forbidden you to do. Do not associate others with him in worship. So in other words, pure monotheism. and opposing all forms of idolatry. That's like the starting point. It's like the baseline that you must have is your worship in one true unseen God. Secondly, you must not fail to honor your parents, respect and care for them. Do not kill your children, either for fear of poverty, because Allah provides. You must have a respect for life and human life in particular. And do not come near indecencies, whether it's openly or secretly. So you must shun all evil in your life, avoid the temptations that you might find. And likewise, even don't do things like how today the LGBTQ community is preaching very openly, but don't do things that are indecent, because this is what one of the prophets, Hazrat Lut alayhi salam, came with, that message against homosexuality in a very open way. So this was one of the sort of key commandments that were sort of embedded in every faith that was divinely revealed. Then it says, do not take a human life that is made sacred by Allah except with a legal right. So murder is to be avoided at all costs. But if in the case of a just war, murder is permitted, because then you are under threat of being annihilated and you need to fight back, and therefore jihad and war is permitted as well. And do not come near the wealth of the orphan unless intending to enhance it until they attain maturity. So here we look at our financial dealings, and we're talking of the one segment of community who is the most destitute, the most um, neglected and not looked after. And here the orphan is mentioned in particular, that you must look after their wealth and give it as, if you are trusted as a trustee to look after their wealth, then you must make sure that you invest it properly, or you look after it properly, so that when they become of mature age, you must be able to give it back to them, with obviously even with the income earned on top of it, and give it back to them. So look after the orphans, the widows, look after their property, their well-being. And the verse carries on into give full measure and weigh with justice. So be just in all our financial dealings. Trade, fairness is encouraged, and keep away from interest, which is totally haram, and it cannot be justified in any way. And this is what Shuaib alayhi salam came to his community with. We never require any soul any more than what you can afford to bear. So this is what you must do: maintain a balance in life, how to deal with stresses. You must be able to deal with life and what it poses as challenges to all. Whenever you speak with justice, even regarding a close relative. So don't be swayed by the fact that he's your cousin or relative, and therefore you swing the case in his favor because you can do it. No, you should actually maintain justice, even if it's against a very close relative. Right? And you must have the strength to speak truth to power. Very important. Then the fulfilling of all covenants. In other words, every promise we've made to Allah, whatever He's commanded us to do, we should do. Whatever He's told us not to do, we should also stay away from it. So fulfill all our contracts, promises, etc. And moreover, this is my path, which is straight. So follow it and do not follow other ways, for you will be separated from His way. Now, if you recall Surah Fatiha, when we started this whole course, is about Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, Sirat al-Ladina an'amta alayhim, ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Amin. So if you look at these bullet points of these last two slides that I've shown you, is essentially the same message that every prophet came to every community that they preached and lived within. Now, with time, obviously, people know all these things, but people go astray. People follow their own whims and fancies. They follow their egos, and they corrupt this beautiful system of life, or pattern of behavior that Allah has shown to us. We somehow sidetrack from it, and we do our own thing. And unfortunately, we become, other things that in life which we shouldn't be. Now, just to recap, this Abrahamic faith, Judaism also is based on strict monotheism. They do talk of a single, indivisible, non-compound God. So it's really something against what Christianity is, because there they talk of a trinity of sorts. So they believe in a God called Yahweh, which is the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Solomon, David, etc. And they were delivered from slavery in Egypt, and the law of Moses, the 10 Commandments, were given at Mount Sinai, and these were described in the Torah. And about 1,000 years later, all the rabbis got together and they tried to interpret this Torah into their present-day lives, and they came out with a book called the Talmud, which is their versions or their interpretations of what the Torah actually means. And this came about later in time. Then we have the Jews we know there were 12 tribes that started off somewhere in Canaan, and they scattered all over the world. So the diaspora of Jews are all over the world. You have essentially Ashkenazi Jews who are of European origin, and the Sephardi or Mizrahi Jews from other parts of the diaspora. Some similarities between Muslims and Jews. They also have meat that's slaughtered in a similar way as we slaughter our halal. The only difference is that you have Jews, in fact, quite a proportion of them that also eat pork. So obviously you can't have kosher pork. And then on top of it, you have kosher wine. So we don't have any wine or liquor, but they have kosher wines as well. So they do fast, which is very much like us, but not a full month. They have different Yom Kippur and certain events in their lives that they fast for. They also have believing Sabbath as a holy day of the week, which is the Saturday. In Christianity, we know they've got the Injil or the New Testament, and this was a book compiled by the disciples of Jesus while he was alive and even after he died. Monotheist Trinity, although they say it's still monotheistic in a sort of way. They say that Jesus is kind of God, although he's also the Son of God, and he died on the cross and he was resurrected 3 days after he died and the like. And also their belief is that we are saved by the faith, by having faith in Jesus Christ. So he's regarded as a savior. So we can sin, and he's going to ultimately take care of our sins for us. So it's a bit of a strange way of looking at life in that somebody else is going to account for the sins you do, which doesn't sort of rationally make sense. But they do believe in life after death. Now, Islam, we know, is about pure monotheism. It's stands on 5 pillars, the 7 articles of faith. The Quran is the final testament, and we believe in all the prophets as prophets. Now, just two things that we can share with the other two Abrahamic faiths, which is Judaism and Christianity, is that this verse in the Quran says that foods that were made lawful to the other communities, the Jews and the Christians, are foods that can be made lawful for us, obviously, if it's slaughtered and done in the correct way. And then also lawful for us in marriage as Muslims are chaste women from among the believers and from amongst the Jews and Christians. So these are the two categories that the Quran mentions specifically that we can accept from them as well. Then we move on to just how the global picture looks in terms of people that abide by the respective faiths. The light blue is the Christianity, which is the biggest faith adherence number of people in the world. Islam comes second, Hinduism somewhere around the third, Buddhism lower down, folk and other traditional religions come at the bottom. And religion is the category of atheistics and agnostics, those that don't believe and those that just doubt everything. Now, just as a matter of interest, there are 7 million Jews in the world today, 2.4 billion Christians, and 1.6 billion Muslims. Now, sometimes we take comfort in numbers, but we know in world politics what 1.6 means. Like if you look at the Palestine issue just today, what does it mean? Even though we're such a big number and we can pull so much of weight, but where are we as an ummah? We're very, very weak and we're very divided. And unfortunately, we have moved away from all those commandments that we've just seen earlier on. But let's come back to the surah. Now, if you look at the first generation of Muslims, obviously when the Prophet started preaching, the very first people that accepted Islam without any doubt was his closest friend Abu Bakr, his wife Khadija, and Hazrat Ali, who was the nephew of the Prophet, is one of the youngest boys that accepted Islam. And if you look at all of these people, they came from having essentially, they were either polytheists or atheists or agnostics or maybe even Christians or Jews, because that was the populace of the day. some of them, and there were four types of people, right? Now, why are we categorizing this? Because I think it applies in all times. We have the group of people that are very clean in their hearts. They're very sincere in what they do. They always talk honestly. They are basically the epitome of what a good human being should be. And Abu Bakr was like that. Khadija, his wife, was like that. And even Waraka ibn Nawfal, he was a Christian, an Arab Christian, like a priest who, when Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was given that first revelation of Iqra, Khadija took him to her cousin Waraka ibn Nawfal to say, "What can you tell us? Is this who that's holding prophecy or what?" And Waraka confirmed that this is exactly what the Injil talked about, and he confirmed the fact that the Nubuwah or the prophethood was being assigned to the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and as such he will become the Prophet. So we have, and he actually, although he said all this and he was a very sincere believer and all that, but I don't think he died before he could actually accept Islam. It was in that very short period when he just saw this sign and he was like kind of accepting of the faith already, but he didn't formally accept it, unfortunately. But the thing is, he was clean-hearted, and sort of amenable to the faith. Then we have another category of people that are kind of very clean inside, but outwardly they had other kind of characteristics. But when they saw the light of Islam, even outwardly they changed completely. And two such examples were Hamza and Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu. They converted very soon after the message was being sort of projected. And once they converted, they obviously became good, strong stalwarts for the cause of Islam. Then we have other people who inwardly they were good people. They were like Abu Jahl was very wise, very generous, very clever, intelligent, a strategic person, thinker. But unfortunately, he was not able to take that plunge, to take that last leap and that leap of faith and enter the fold. He remained an enemy of Islam, although inwardly he was a good person. So we have that kind of group as well. And then obviously the last one was Abu Lahab. When we studied Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab, you remember he was like evil on the inside and evil on the outside. He had an evil nature, and outwardly he displayed it as well in terms of his dealings with the Prophet and the first Sahabas and how they were treated and all that stuff. So essentially, this is a characteristic of different kinds of people that lived in the era of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now, many of them, as time went on, maybe not so much in the Mecca period, but in the Medina period, the last 10 years after those three major wars were fought, many people accepted Islam. Some accepted it sincerely, wholeheartedly, and they became like category 1. Some became like category 2 as well, which were very good people. But some remained that doubtful guys sitting on the fence, the challenges in their own things inside, and they were a thorn in the way of the Prophet throughout, and he had to sort of decisively deal with them. And then we have even the likes of the Jews who settled in Medina. Some of them openly sort of connived with the Mushrikun in Mecca, and even in the wars that were fought, they stayed back or convinced others not to go into the war and gave them all sorts of excuses. To such an extent, the Prophet had to deal with them decisively and expel them from Medina at one stage later in his life before he died. So this is essentially, and now given Salman al-Farsi as an example there, where he was a Zoroastrian, a family who believed in fire worshipping in Persia, in Iran of the time. So his father asked Salman to make the fire and keep the fire burning, because that's a belief, the Magians, that they believe in fire and therefore a fire should be burning all the time. But Salman had a doubt in his heart about this faith. So one day he met Christians. He was so convinced that Christianity was better, he converted. But after converting, he stayed with the bishop, and he saw how this bishop was a wheeler and dealer, and he used to take money from the people and not give it to the poor. And so when he died, Salman actually went to the other people and said, you know what, this man, you people had so much of respect for him as a bishop, but in actual fact, look at what he's got. And he showed them his personal, you know, covered with a whole lot of things in it. So he then, after converting to Christianity, he was still not happy with Christianity. Then he went further. He was looking for further answers. He was sold as a slave to a Jew, and this Jew treated him like a slave. And to get his freedom, somebody had to pay for it, firstly. And secondly, he made another condition. He said, only if you can give me a date plantation with 300 new date palms, and as soon as the date palms ripen, then only will you be given freedom. And the Prophet ﷺ was told about this, and the Prophet ﷺ planted this date palms himself. And lo and behold, within a year, normally date palms take many years to come to fruition. This man got dates, and Salman was freed. And when he was freed, he asked somebody at the time that I want to meet this man called Muhammad. I've heard a lot about him, and what's a sign that I can say that I've met him? So they told him that the Prophet will not accept a gift of charity. In other words, if you say it's sadaqah and you give something to him, the Prophet won't accept it. But if you give it as a normal gift, not calling it a charity, then the Prophet will accept it. So when the Prophet also came to Medina, Salman went out of his way to meet him, and to prove this prophecy or this thing, he actually took some dates, and he first told the Prophet, I'm giving you this as charity. The Prophet accepted it, but he didn't eat it. He gave it to all his Sahabas or others around him. So then Salman realized that this is the true man, because then later on he came with another bit of dates. He said, I'm giving you this as a gift now. And the Prophet took it, partook of it, ate it, and shared it with others. So this kind of proved for him what somebody had told him, that this is the man you must look out for, and this was the Prophet Muhammad in Medina. His other famous thing is he built a trench around Medina, which was a new kind of warfare. It was the reason for one of the reasons for the success of the Prophet and the Sahaba in the third battle. At the end of his life, he lived a very frugal life. He even advised Abu Darda once about duties to his family and to his wife, that he mustn't fast all the time. He must look after his wife and kids as well. And later on, he became a governor as well. So, in any case, what I'm telling you is this is a story of a person who came from like the category of kuffar, like fire worshipper. Then he became like the Ahl Kitab category of he met a Christian, became a Christian. He had a relationship with a Jew, but he didn't actually convert to Judaism. And finally, he accepted Islam. So this is a story that runs in almost a lot of Sahaba's lives in this kind of a way, where they had very checkered careers, dicey childhoods, but when they converted, they became the strongest ever Muslim cohort that you could ever think of. So now we come to the detailed explanation quickly. So this first 4 verses or first ayat is about how this Bayyinah, this fact that the Prophet is in the midst as well as the Quran is in the midst, separated the people of the book, the Ahl Kitab, those Jews and Christians that were also in that category of people, as well as all the mushrikun. They were like set apart now because if the proof came to you and you didn't accept it, then it means you remaining who you were, and you don't want to see the light for what it is, because the light is in front of you in terms of the Prophet and the Quran. So you remain what you are. Right? Then, so you're going to deny this ayah number 2, which is the Apostle, the Prophet coming, talking about scriptures and showing you the source in literally in black and white to show you that this is the Quran, these are the laws, accept it, abide by it, and you will attain your salvation. So they never changed, a lot of them, even though the Bayyinah had come to them. So this is the first ayah. Then we look at the second part of this surah that talks of change from into something. You first of all had to, you weren't commanded except to do the following, which is one is Ya'budullah, to worship Allah. Mukhlisin, from the word ikhlas, Surah Ikhlas, we had Surah Qul Huwallahu, right? Ikhlas is sincerity. So you do your worship in a very, very sincere way, and you become a Hanif. A Hanif is somebody who, and this was a title given to Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, being someone very pure in faith, right? Being of a very good-hearted nature. وَيُقِيمُونَ Salah, and establishing or maintaining the prayer at regular intervals, in yu'tuna zakat. So the Salah is for you individually, for your own development, your own personal benefit, and the zakah is for others' benefit, for you as a community member. And you're not living a very sort of selfish personal life just about your own salah and your own ibadah, but you're giving back and you're plowing back and you're doing something for uplifting the communities around you. وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ, and that is the best of the religion, the most upright of religions. And as for the faithless, and there were good Christians and Jews, but the faithless from that group, as well as the faithless from the mushrikeen, they are going to be in the Nari Jahannam, khalidina fiha, living there forever, and they will be the worst of creatures, the most abject of low of humankind. Then as for those who have iman, amanu, and amal as-salihat, which is the doing of good deeds, they are of the khairul bariyah. Now you find this theme of ibadah and iman and salah and zakat and doing of good deeds comes through in Watini wa Zaytun also, which we covered previously, and which we're going to cover in Wal Asr later on in another few sessions time. Essentially, this is the formula for success in our lives. We need to have sincere belief, worship sincerely and in the right way, being the true slave of the Rabb, the Master and the Sustainer. Give our zakat, do our salah, and don't make kufr, right? And if we do all that, which is in 6 and 7, then what's your reward is ultimate, the Gardens of Eden, amazing place, streams running at your feet, streams of milk, water, honey, you name it, to remain in this kind of environment forever, absolutely pure, not polluted, managed by a greater creation where you don't have to even lift a spoon or lift an arm to do any work whatsoever. Everything is just there for you. Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Him. And that is for those who truly fear their Lord. Okay, so we'll stop at that point. Bismillah, we'll read Wal Asr together. Wal Asr, inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu s-salihat, wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr.